Yeah, I think we are.
This
I
is
think
this is why they call us the Tech Boys. You
the
know,
tech bros.
Tech
Yeah.
Bros.
So what are we talking about today, Scott?
Well, we got a lot of things, man. How are you doing? How are you doing? Your voice sounds a little frayed. You sick?
Uh, no. You know what it's from, honestly? This is embarrassing, but it's from singing in the car. Uh, so
Okay. What are you belting out these days?
I mean, it's the same hits from the high school years. Some of the good old emo songs that I think I've mentioned before on the pod,
Oh, I
but
love
yeah,
this.
yeah, man.
It's really kind of sad, but people stop really collecting new music once high school, definitely college ends, right? You
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
really.
like 18 years old is like the music that you will like for the rest of your life. And I feel like that's pretty consistent across human beings. And I don't know why that is, but it just seems like that's the music that you like forever.
Is it because like emotions hit harder at those age, or you just like everything's new and like that's sort of the surroundings? I don't know, or maybe you should have time and money to spend on music at that age.
I think it's the hormones. Like it just feels more amplified because you're like raging on the inside.
A lot of angst involved.
Yeah. Or at
Do
least that's the case for me. Who knows?
you know the comedian Nick Swartzen?
I remember him. What was that movie he was in that was so funny? Grandma's Boy? Was that
Grandma's
it?
Boy. Well, he
That
was
was
a
very funny.
he had a funny bit about like going to grandma's house like in the year 2060, and like your grandma puts on like music now and it's like old timey sort of like 40s music, and like in 40 years you can have grandmas be like, here we go, is bitch motherfucker. Rap rap.
I mean,
Twerk
yeah,
twerk.
it probably already happens today, but yeah, by then, I mean, it's kind of. Do you ever see that movie Idiocracy?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's sort of like that. It's like, yeah, we're definitely trending in that direction in some ways.
uh oh, it's so palpable. Definitely idiocracy, right?
Well,
It's got
I
what
mean, I don't
plants
even know.
needs.
I don't know enough about like genetics or anything to prove the thesis of idiocracy, but I mean, it's kind of a scientific thesis, which is like, if and what was that song, "Flagpole Sitta" by Harvey
Only
Dane?
stupid people are
Yeah,
breeding.
only
Yeah.
stupid people are breeding. Is like, I mean, does humanity become stupider? I don't know. Is this an open question? Not sure.
Well, I'm glad that you're belting out your. Oh, what are you belting out? Like ELO? No, no, you said emo music.
Emo music. So, do you really want to go down this rabbit hole? Because
Yes. I don't know. I
okay.
don't know this about Cole.
So one of my favorite bands just actually released a new song, and it's very rare that something I used to like from a band and they release something like nobody has good new music. Like
Yeah.
if they're a washed up old band. They released a new song. It's called Sold, and it's a band called Taking Back Sunday, and I used to love them. And that song is awesome. It's really good. And like they haven't released a good song in 15 years. And they've released a lot of songs in those 15 years. So it's a
Oh
banger
wait,
for
so
sure.
they had a dead period where like they're releasing music just didn't hit for you, but
Yeah.
there's a new
Well,
one
I
for
mean,
you.
they were like one of the most well known like pop punk emo bands of the time, and then as all of those bands did, they fell out of existence because that music just became unpopular. And then, but it's not like they did. They continued to make music, and I followed it off and on. But I was like, this isn't as good as the old stuff. But then they made this new song. It came out like a month ago, and I've been jamming to it. It's really good.
Are you going to Monroe? Touring
Hmm.
Monroe?
No, I just mean like in the car and at home on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know, but I want to see you crowd surf.
You they let me down quick.
I flew back to Seattle just the other day, and here's kind of my hoity-toity ways. Like I took the subway into town, and then like I take the monorail. It's like a very touristy sort of thing to do to like my areas because like I'm close by, and there's a throng of young kids, probably like 16 to 19, on the monorail with me. and like I overhear like some of them saying like, the concert, something. And my dumbass, like I turned to one of them, I was like, "Oh, how was the concert you just went to?" And they're like, "No, we're going to it. It's like 8:30 at night." I was like, "Oh God, it's getting late."
It's like, who's doing a concert at 2 p.m?
Exactly. On like a Wednesday.
I mean,
They're like,
unless it's
"No,
like
we're
a
going
music
to it. We're
festival.
going to it. We're not getting home till 2 a.m., old man."
So does the monorail go all the way to the airport, or did
No,
you
I
have to
wish it
get on it?
did. It
Yeah.
goes. It's kind of the lamest monorail around this side of Disney for sure. But it just goes from like downtown to the touristy area. It's one
Hmm.
stop, two
I mean,
stops technically.
you've probably seen the monorail over in Irving. It's pretty
No, they have a
weird. Yeah.
monorail.
Yeah, it just goes around Las Colinas, and it's like it
Mm.
goes from nowhere to nowhere. I don't think it has any riders.
Las Colinas also like that they mysteriously have a canal system.
Do they? I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
know they have water. I didn't know it was from canals.
Well, I mean, like you could ride like a Venetian boat, a canal boat
I
around
didn't
Las
know
Colinas,
this.
should you want to. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very elegant. Maybe we'll go on a date sometime. Who knows?
Well, yeah, we can share a ride in a
Yeah.
gondola, I guess you'd call it.
Gondola. Yeah.
But I do got some stuff for you. It's gonna be a mixed bag. You want to do some grab bag?
Yeah, let's do some grab bag. And one of the things I'll say for the beauty of our guests is our listeners, I mean,
I'll be your guest.
I have no idea what we're going to talk about today. So any reactions you see, completely authentic, because I don't know.
And I only know a little bit more than you do, honestly. So
And that's pretty typical.
it's a TikTok, and unfortunately, it's taken down. But like the person was making a point of like everything that you want is on the other side of embarrassment. So you can do things, and like you can be afraid that people are going to make fun of you and this sort of stuff, which they probably will
Yeah.
because you're doing something kind of weird. But they also make the point that it's people that have made it over that hump that would not make fun of you because like they became the podcaster, they became the photographer, or they went for a degree or whatever, while those other people that would never try it, they're the ones that's going to make fun of you.
Yeah. Well, I think this is sometimes called like the beginner's mindset of, but I mean, I feel this personally. I don't know if you have, but yeah, like I'd already kind of gotten over it somewhat when we started this podcast together, but I was writing articles beforehand. And I mean, man, I was such a wuss. Like I was like so whiny about it. I was like, are people going to make fun of me? It's like, I was so worried what people were going to say. And it's because I guess maybe I had been one of those people saying the negative things in the past because, I was a wuss, but, yeah, man, it's like you got to be in the arena. You got to get yourself out there, and I guess get on the other side of embarrassment, as this person was saying. I kind of had this funny thing happen yesterday. I'd be curious to see what you think about this.
Yeah.
I was at this meeting. I'm not gonna say what the name of it was or anything, but some of these people were talking. They're like, I was like, man, listen to this podcast. It's like about directions, like directionally correct. I don't know. Any of you guys listen to it? And I'm like, it's like, I'm on it.
Yeah, listen.
That's the funny thing is, I guess people don't know who we are, but like they're just like talking about it out in the real world. I thought that was funny.
That's super cool. Like you hear about it in the wild.
Yeah, and I guess you get to hear about it. Like how people really feel because they don't know who you are.
Yeah, did they drop any nuggets? I get no feedback.
No, I think they were talking about like employee listening or whatever, but I mean, we've had a few guests on that talked about that topic. So, but I think it was more just like, hey, have you guys heard of this thing?
Oh, well, that's super cool. Just, get a little listenership or whatever. But I think you're absolutely right about like trying to start things at the very beginning. Like the spotlight effect or fallacy is real. In the sense
Is that the whole like you drop your keys below the streetlight thing, or is that something else?
I don't know what that means.
Well, there's like you always hear it's like, oh, you see the person searching for their keys under a streetlight at night, and they say, oh, did you drop your keys here? And they say, no, I dropped them over there, but the light's right here. Is that the spotlight effect, or is that something else?
That sounds like a joke, right?
It's like a, I don't know. I don't know what you would call it, like a adage, a parable or something. You hear a lot about it, and I don't know. You go to a conference, people. Anyway, act like I didn't say that.
No, I'm making the point that okay, I'll make a broader point. Everyone like lives life as if it's a movie. Like I am the star of
Yeah,
my
like the
movie,
Truman
and
Show.
like everyone else is kind of supporting cast. And you got these people that are like, oh, it's an NPC over here at their desk job, and like this person over here, and like, oh, here comes Cole, and he's like another player in my movie. And everyone is looking at me because I am the star of my movie. No,
Yeah,
no one cares about you at all. Is the real point? That's the spotlight fallacy. Uh,
yeah. I mean, we're not. None of us are on the Truman Show. At least I don't think we are. But yeah, like I love this term. I'm not a video gamer, but I guess I've only heard it briefly. But is it like a diss to call somebody an NPC? And what does that stand for again?
non-playable character. So in I don't know, Grand Theft Auto or all these video games, they make these like massive sort of maps, and they things to fill it, right? So you got all
Yeah,
these automatons that walk around and they'll do things, but they have like no minds. And I don't know if it's a diss to call someone an NPC. It definitely is. It's definitely not positive,
yeah,
but it's also just kind of referring to someone like has like no real consciousness or thoughts of their own, I guess.
yeah. Which I mean, is probably most of us. But I wonder. So this is sort of a HR question. Do you think there's like a certain percentage of people in an organization that should be NPCs for a company to be successful? Or like should they have zero? 'Cause I don't think the number is zero for sure. Like you have to have some people that just come in and like do their jobs and go home, but like how many, you know?
Oh well, I mean, it depends. Put the IO hat on,
Yeah.
right? In the sense of like it depends on the function and like what you're trying to do. Like you don't really want you would want a really creative group of people developing um I don't know, user interfaces or some sort of
Mhm.
product facing thing. You don't want a whole lot of creative accountants that are
Yeah.
out there like being
Mm.
real avant-garde about how they do things
You need some
with the
NPC account.
budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
The people just kind of follow the rules, they know the rules and this sort of thing. I wouldn't
See?
they're not necessarily NPCs though. I think it's
Maybe I don't understand the concept, but that's fine. You know, I'm old.
yeah, maybe it is just the massive diss of like you're someone just existing in society, but you offer no real value because you have no mind of your own.
You offer no value. It's like, yeah,
Well,
no, it's not mean. It's not mean at all.
it's also scary just how much of our day is automatic processing. Like quite literally, the alarm goes
Yeah.
off, and like I have my routine. I go straight to the shower. Actually, I go get a big old glass of water and I go straight to the shower. I get out. I usually go to the living room, watch something on TV for like 10 minutes, get
Yeah.
dressed, something like that. But
Well, I
so much
definitely
of the
feel
day is
like
just
time it's so much worse in a remote environment because like I feel like months
yeah.
just go by like weeks used to go by in the office. And it's a lot of that routinization. Um the plus side is like I don't ever feel like I have really long days anymore, which is interesting.
You don't feel like you have long days because it is just so routine for you now? Like it just the days start melting away, this sort of thing?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's definitely the melting away part. I'm not sure why it feels like it's melting away,
Or it's like the
but
commute. You just don't have the commute.
well, it's not just the commute though. Like I remember being in an office and like things feeling like, wow, this is like I could count the seconds till the end of this day. I don't feel that very often anymore. Like days just seem to fly by.
The first job out of master's level, I wasn't being paid very much at all, and they didn't really have a whole lot for me to do at times. I've now learned that you need to like raise your hand and like find your own work, and try and it makes your world a whole lot more interesting if you do it that way. But I broke down my salary based on 5-minute increments on the clock, like how much I was paid, and like One day, like I worked it out to how much I was being paid per like 5-minute block, and I was like, yeah, there's another 75 cents. You know what? Whatever it was.
Ching.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
It's no way to live. It's no way to live.
It'd be fun to break down the number of minutes we spent on this podcast and
Oh my
how much
God,
we're being paid for that. It's
the
like, oh my God, we're getting
ROI
paid, 1 cent an hour.
negative sometimes.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. I think we've probably exhausted that for what it's worth. But yeah, go out. No one really cares about you, so go do whatever you want. I think is the whole plan, right?
I actually kind of love that. It's very liberating.
It's super liberating.
Like it's kind of like if you started a new school, like in like high school or something like that. It's like you can be a completely different person at the new school, right? You don't have to like why you could be the crazy hat guy. You wear crazy hats. That's who you are now.
Two things, just because you mentioned that, and they're very related. When my given name is Matthew, but when I started master's program, I didn't know anybody. I started going by Scott. I always wanted to go by Scott. That's how I started going by Scott.
Wait, is Scott not your name?
No,
like at all? Like not even a middle name?
Oh, it is my middle name. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was like, because that would be really outrageous if you're like, yeah, I'm Matthew Samuel Hines. People call me Scott.
But like now I can differentiate my childhood friends from more adult post-college friends by what they call me.
So how do you feel about this for people, like other people, not yourself obviously, but that like a person who like changed their name from being like Susie to Susan in their life, and then like later in life they're like, well, I go by Susan now. Like, how do you react to that?
I mean, you can do whatever you want,
Well, yeah, obviously.
You can do that, but people that are like militant about their name, like, I don't know, get over yourself. Like, it's Tara, not Tara. It's like, okay, shut up.
I'm gonna start going by Cole. It's not Cole anymore.
Yeah. Cole. There's an apostrophe.
Yeah, just put a little tilde on the end of it. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It's just leave people alone. Stop making life difficult for other people. It's kind of like if you don't have a hobby, one will be assigned to you. Like
you'll find something interesting to quibble over, even if there's nothing.
People will call you whatever the fuck they want to call you. So get ready for it. You need to be ready for it.
Well, let's do some more grab bag.
Here, just one more point. The more no, we'll fuck it over.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm really tired today. I apologize. This thing is called How Complex Systems Fail. I've brought this up to you before. We've never talked about it on the pod. It's really interesting, densely packed article on org change, and it has, I believe, like 18 points. But I'm going to bring up like the first 10 or so.
Okay.
So talking about complex systems are inherently hazardous systems.
Can I ask where it comes from just real quick? Like, what is it?
Let's see. Yeah, it's a article. Let's see if I can find the actual. It's Cook 2009. I don't see a journal associated with it. We can put a link in there though. Okay. It's on ResearchGate. But cool. It's talking about complex systems. So you're talking about transportation, healthcare, power generation, organizations, whatever you want to talk about. But complex systems are inherently hazardous systems. So they face hazards all the time. They are heavily and successfully defended against failure. So think about these things such as backup systems. You don't want like data to be leaked, this sort of thing. You train your employees. You institute policies and procedures so you essentially avoid failures. Catastrophe requires multiple failures. So a single point of failure is not enough. Like, so one person cannot destroy a system. Yep. You need a cascade of these sort of things. The complexity of the system makes it impossible for them to run without multiple flaws being present. So there's always some sort of flaw in the system just because like the complexity of it. And because of this, complex systems run in degrade mode. They're always broken. Complex systems are always broken. It's really wild.
But you could say like the brokenness is a feature, not a bug. You know, it's
yeah. Especially when you're trying new things, right? Or you're trying to correct errors, this sort of thing. Catastrophe is always just around the corner. They occur at any time. Because you're always susceptible to it.
Because they're like really high variance too. You know?
Yes. Now here we go. Here's the sort of stuff that I really wanted to kind of get to. Post-accident attribution to root cause is fundamentally wrong. There is no isolation of the root cause of an accident. Only jointly are these causes sufficient to create an accident. So there's no single one root cause. Once again, you need a cascading failure for something to go wrong.
Yeah, if there's no, I mean, it's like the economy, right? Like, like no single thing can help fix the economy, but no single thing can bring it down either, except for maybe housing. Let's say housing could bring down the whole economy.
Okay, now here we go. Hindsight bias, post-accident assessments of human performance. Knowledge of the outcome makes it seem like the events leading up to the outcome should have appeared more salient to practitioners at the time than it was actually the case. All right, so like, oh, you should have known this was going to happen. But here's point 10. All practitioner accidents are gambles. The overt failure often appears to have been inevitable to the practitioner, acting in a blunder or deliberate, willful disregard for certain impending failure. But all practitioner actions are actually gambles. You don't know what's actually going to happen. In fact, most people are just acting in good faith, right? They're trying to do something good.
And I would actually argue, because I don't know if it's related to this article, but I've seen like within complex systems, one of the things that denotes a complex systems is emergent things like emergent behaviors or emergent outcomes that you would have never predicted. And so how could you ever hold someone accountable if something was completely emergent and out of their control?
Totally emergent, out of their control. And I mean, I think that's the beauty of the complex system. That's why you get people together, because you can produce more than any individual can do on their own, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also highlights the fact that people are trying their best at their jobs, right? And they're not trying to mess things up. And this article is essentially saying they can't do it on their own anyway.
Yeah. I guess, well, like even within a complex system, there are things that are simple systems that, you can mess up. Yes. But it shouldn't bring down the whole system,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
mean,
you
can be held accountable for like things within your control. It's just this, grandioso system that you can't be held accountable for. But it is interesting to see when organizations try to do this, and they're like, yeah, you're responsible for this business unit, and therefore it's your fault. It's like, well.
Or like you create a product and like, it doesn't, or it causes some sort of harm or damage. And the blame lays at your feet, but it's like, like this had several checks and balances. There's y'all to decide the program to set this up. We were trying to execute it. I mean, there's multiple things that had to happen for that to occur, right? No one person can make these sort of like unilateral decisions in an organization.
Well, I know this probably seems unrelated, but it makes me think of that 30 for 30 on Steve Bartman. I think we talked about it with the Daniel a few weeks ago, because they talk about the concept of scapegoating. And like in a complex system, obviously what happened in that circumstance of him catching the thing at the Cubs game, but there was like this whole complex system of things that interacted, but they blamed this one person, and they ended up being the scapegoat that, everybody got, to feel enlightened because they hate this one dude. And I feel like that happens in organizations all the time too.
Oh, it definitely does. And because it's easy. It's easy to point to one person and be like, you're bad, you're evil. It's like, no, that person's, unless they were acting unethically or deliberately trying to sabotage, which I'm sure it occurs, but probably very, very rarely.
Yeah, but you got a whole complex system of NPCs interacting with each other. And it's like you just pick one out of the crowd and you're like, it's your fault. It's like, no, it's not. They're non-player, whatever you call them.
Here are two more. Change introduces new forms of failure. So those emergent properties that you were talking about, great. But now we have new issues to deal with, i.e., like, I don't know, Gen AI.
Yeah.
Great. It's a great new tool. What are the implications of it? We don't
Well,
know right now. It's all a gamble. Something could go very, very wrong.
I mean, isn't that like I feel like it's a complex system in multiple levels. Like
Yeah.
just the way that it works, just itself is a complex system. But then its introduction into different facets of the economy also, and in organizations, like if some teams are using, others are not, maybe it gets turned on for certain, software providers and then others don't. And it's like all these different, variables are being like levers are being pulled to flip a variable in the equation to like now it's generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
And because that can create because aren't complex systems because of the high variance, they can be very unstable at times too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Once again, like there's catastrophe lurking at every
Mm-hmm.
element, and like there's all sorts of different ways it can fail. Here's just a couple more. Views of cause limit the effectiveness of defense against future events. So once again, like you isolate one root
Yeah.
cause, not so much. Duh, 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 duh. People continuously create safety, so they're consistently trying to develop defenses. Failure-free operations require expertise with failure. So you need to fail to actually create good systems. Kind of like those like hackers that the government hires to now be white hat
White
hackers.
hat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to have failure is required to create fail safes or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I
That
mean, like
sounded
you
more clever in my head.
well, like you need to fail to learn, right?
Yeah.
You can't just be perfect out the gate.
Yeah.
I.e., get over your spotlight effect. Get out there, try something.
Yeah. We're not all in the spotlight except for when we are.
You want to know who is in the spotlight is actors,
Are they?
like movie actors.
I mean,
This is a article by Timothy Judge. It's older, 2014. But the study found that on the average earnings per film for female movie stars peaks around age 34 and then decreases rapidly, whereas male movie stars earnings peak around age 51 and remain stable thereafter.
unless you're Meryl Streep,
Yeah, there are definite outliers here. Gender moderates relationship between age and earnings, such that earnings decrease with age for females, blah, 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 blah. But boy, it's wild. Like the actual earning potential for females just kind of peaks out like mid 30s.
Well, I think it kind of comes to like, what do you want to be known for, right? Like if like to use Meryl Streep as an example, it's like she's just one of the most brilliant actresses in history. But I mean, she's obviously a beautiful and elegant woman, but she wasn't getting by because of her look. She was getting by because of her talent. Whereas some people do get by early in their career just because, they're just fantastic looking. And like then that diminishes over time just as everybody gets older. And so it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? It's like, well, we're going to look for either some, younger people with looks, or we're going to look for some people with talent.
the arc for an actor. Boy, the whole actor's life is a really fascinating realm. Like one, they have to like you to put you into the movie, and like you're constantly on these sort of like 9 month contracts where you're constantly trying to hunt for new sort of things. And then like at the very beginning you play like the teenager, and then like you move into like the college friend, and then like you move into like the mom, and then you move into like the teenage dad, and then like you're
And
like the
that's if you're
granddad.
wildly successful too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you're oh yeah. Don't even start with like, did you get picked for anything in the first place?
Yeah, like
These are people already made
99% of people who do it never get picked for anything. It's kind of a wild. I was actually thinking about this earlier. Have you ever heard of the book "The World Is Flat" by Tom Friedman? I think is his name.
I see these people on Twitter all the time, but no.
So I
Thank you, sir.
No, he wrote it a while ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. They made us read it my first semester in graduate school. And the whole concept is like, don't get comfortable. You're no longer competing against like the person down the street. You're competing against every human being in the world who has ambition and drive because of the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
And I feel like acting is very much like that. It's like you're not just competing to be like the most beautiful person in your town. You're competing against every beautiful person in the world just to be in this type of environment. It's like very feast or famine.
Boy, that is true. Like trying to do community theater in your town is one thing. Trying to go out to Hollywood and make it is a totally different one, right?
Very much so.
Do you know Jeremy Piven, actor? He was
He's the Entourage guy.
Yeah,
right?
Ari and Entourage, and he's been
Yeah.
in like many other things. But I saw an interview with him, and he said that what differentiated him from other people that were auditioning is that he would memorize his lines going into the audition. Other people would like get the script there and like try and wing it, kind of like I'm doing right now with this sort of with this thing. But he would like memorize it and like, you know, come up with like his own like take on the character and like go in there, and that would impress them in the sense of like, oh, this guy already like knows his lines, this sort of stuff. And he got a lot of parts that way.
Well, he plays like, I don't know if it's typecasting or not, but he definitely plays like the jerk asshole really well. So, you know, that probably helped it also.
He definitely played Ari very well. I think he was in some college movie, like a dean or something like that. I first saw him in Singles, great movie about Seattle.
I've never seen it.
I also saw like someone was talking about the music industry. So back in the day, like the band Oasis, the Gallagher brothers, I think that's what they're called. Complete assholes. They'd come into a studio, destroy it. You know, you say like, hey, come to the photo shoot. And like maybe they show up 4 hours late and like drunk and like, you know, like cuss you out. And, like,
I mean, that's rock and roll, baby.
Rock and roll, baby. You come on stage like 40 minutes late and the crowd's like, you know, irritated, this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And essentially those people are not around anymore. Those sort of rock stars are not around. The record industry would rather have like Harry Styles, some guy that will not get drunk, will show up on time, will, you know, play well, do what they're told, ostensibly. And essentially they're dependable, they're conscientious, which is exactly what you want in a workforce a lot of times too. Like, can I count on you to show up and not destroy my building or studio?
Yeah. Well, I wonder if there's like a pendulum there where you swing, you know, to crazy rock star on one end to highly dependable person on the other end. And I wonder if it'll ever swing back to crazy, you know, rock star again.
I think you need some infusion of like that sort of like,
because you could make an argument music sucks more now too.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. Like, you need an infusion of creativity that you only get from a non-NPC mind, as it were, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, you need that kind of crazy, brilliant, aberrant, divergent person to be, you know, I mean, I think music is a beautiful thing. It kind of communicates back to you kind of like what you really know, but what you haven't maybe consciously recognized. And, you know, you need somebody who has a really deep perspective to do that effectively, because they're kind of tricking you. You know, they're like tricking you with like these sounds and words to like feel something that you wouldn't have felt otherwise.
I had like a revelation recently around like the music industry and bands in general. And essentially each band is a business and they need to run it as such. You cannot have someone that is heroin, you know, or drunk all the time, this sort of stuff. You need someone to show up because that's your moneymaker. That's how you get paid. And
or like, they better be really good.
They better be really good. I saw a band probably like 2 months ago, a bigger touring band with like other bands you've heard of. And,
who was it?
Well, it was Smashing Pumpkins and Stone Temple Pilots.
Okay.
And like I was like sitting there watching them. I was like, this is their business. Like this is their business. They don't want to mess with, because Stone Temple Pilots fired Oh, I can't remember his name. Their old lead singer that eventually died, whatever his name
Yeah, I
was.
was like, I thought he died. Or
He
killed
died, but
himself.
they got some like British guy. I think he's British,
Mm,
but they were awesome, honestly.
yeah.
But it's like, wow, yeah, this is how they make money. They don't want to mess this up.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, yeah, I totally get that. And you really start to see like that's also kind of when I fall out of love with
Yeah.
the band is when you can tell they're doing it just to like pay their mortgage, not because they're like passionate about what they're doing anymore. But I do have a question about it. So when you saw the concert, was it at 2 p.m. in the afternoon or 8 p.m. at night?
I think it probably ended about 10 p.m. Yeah,
There
definitely.
you go. Definitely.
Let's see. Anything else that's pressing? Here's one just kind of interesting. There's a wave of IOs entering master's level programs, like kind of unprecedented amount of enrollees.
Really? Well, how did
Yeah.
you find that out? I mean, how would we even know?
We got an article here from Fortune magazine. Do master's degree programs in psychology are seeing a wave of new applicant. Here's why. Here, I'll just go down.
Why? Yeah, I want to know why.
Um, do a path to accreditation. One of the driving reasons, the big jump in enrollment. Regent University, according to some. So apparently, IO has been accredited by the APA now.
It wasn't before.
I don't know. I'm trying to skim this real hard.
Yeah.
In 2019, APA formed a task force to explore pathways to accreditation on master's level. So apparently, PhD was already accredited.
Oh.
That's right.
I would assume masters were too, but
I would have too. But we got
I
broader.
thought they were gonna say just like there's a high demand for the skill or something, and that's why more people are going into it.
Broader career growth and post-pandemic shift as people just kind of want something to do.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Well,
I
there
have
you
something
go.
kind of related. I was thinking about talking about it in the nerdery, but I'll just share it now. I saw this thing that shows CEOs predict full return to office by 2026. Did you see this?
No, did not see this.
So it's a research report from KPMG, and actually I think it might be a little clickbaity because if you I looked at the research report and it was not as salacious kind of as this headline, but they surveyed 1,300 global CEOs and 64% of them predict full return to office. So this is like 5 days a week in office all the time, and 90% of U.S. executives said they're likely to link this to financial rewards like bonuses, promotions, and office attendance. So basically, all the people who said that there's a new normal, post pandemic, nope, we're going back to the old normal and it will be exactly like it was before. And I thought that this is really a curious finding.
Well, I mean, like once again, it's a complex system that's ever evolving and changing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but you know
whatever.
how you change a system? Change the incentives, right? And so they said they would likely link this to rewards. Well, guess what? You'll change people's behavior pretty quickly if and it's not even that quick. They said 2026. So that's still 3 years away. So you have 3 years to change the incentives to change the complex system.
I think those incentives have always been there, if not sort of like were muted during the
Yeah, like
pandemic.
implicitly, not explicitly sometimes.
As far as as much as people want to say that, like, well, you can work effectively, and we're going to rate you just as well if you're remote. There's still something to be said about seeing the boss in the office and them seeing you and you being able to communicate effectively with your coworkers and get answers quickly and just having these sort of side conversations, all this sort of stuff that is just impossible in a remote environment.
Out of sight, out of mind phenomena,
Absolutely. When you develop LMX with your boss, like all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Technology's got to get better. Maybe the tech bros can help.
Tech bros. We need a little VR glasses, right?
I wonder. I mean,
just let it happen.
It sounds like it's, the technology is finally here to do it effectively. What if we sent VR goggles to every one of our guests and we did all of our podcasts in VR? Wouldn't that be crazy?
I mean, yeah, that would be crazy. That'd be really wild.
I meant it in the colloquial way. You meant it in the yes, that would be crazy.
You want to hear some news of the weird? We'll do
Sure.
quickly. It's attacks by students made medieval Oxford a murder hotspot. Researchers find University City had between 4 and 5 times the number of murders as London or York in the same time period, according to a study. So the reason was you got all these kids that are essentially males, 14 to 19 years old, in this small town, and they develop they have access to bars and prostitutes and this sort of stuff, and they start murdering people.
And they don't have those in London?
They didn't have as much just because of the concentration of these sort of like roving bands of teenage boys.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite as dangerous as, a bunch of young boys with nothing, idle hands. Like let's not do that.
Here you go. It's estimated that the homicide rate in late medieval Oxford, based on 700-year-old coroner's inquest, about 60 to 75 per 100,000 people, 50 times higher than the current rates in 2021 English cities. But what I found like really interesting about this is they have a medieval murder map. So they have a map of all the murders that took place in these like old towns based on, I guess, reports, what have you, and where they took place. So you can actually kind of peruse them.
Imagine it being that person who had to put that together. That had to be a sucky job.
Think so? I would love that.
You would love to have to comb through like newspaper articles for months and years and decades, and then find the times that murder was mentioned, then find on a map and put it on the map and do all this manually. That sounds awful.
I am fascinated by maps. Okay. Here, I'll give you a little.
I'm not talking about the map portion. I'm talking about the digging portion.
Well, I mean, this is like conducting a God dang it, combining a bunch of articles together. Meta-analysis, combining a meta-analysis, finding all the articles, doing the lit review of this sort of stuff. But like once you found it, like plotting it on a map, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, maybe this is an individual difference between.
I think this is because like whenever I go to like an old city, like you go to London, you walk around, you're like, that the Tower of London, that was built like in 1200. That's freaking amazing. Buckingham Palace is, Big Ben, that's probably 1890 sort of thing. Oh, we got this Roman wall that was built like pre, BC, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing sort of history. And I find myself walking around these like little streets, and you're like, I bet someone was like murdered over there. I wonder what crazy stuff happened over there,
Yeah, over a long enough time period, And I mean, the aliens built Stonehenge, so there's that and all the good stuff.
I've gone on the well, I don't know about that, but I've been on the Jack the Ripper walking tour of London. Like, some lady was murdered right there. There you go.
There you go.
You can go lay on the ground next to it, get your photo taken.
Do we have a confusion matrix for today?
I think Cole's over it today.
Yeah,
it's not.
You lost me on the map thing. Sorry.
How you're not fascinated by this? You're not fascinated.
I am fascinated by the output of the map. I would not like to be the person who had to do it, like the groundwork to make it happen.
What if you had an assistant?
That would be ideal.
Just someone to go find. Like, here's the list of all the murders.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's like ChatGPT, just manual form, right?
I just don't want to be the person who has to go through all the newspaper articles.
All right, let's talk about this article. Noise is the secret destroyer of productivity. It's a secret destroyer because it impacts cognition, not effort. So we just don't notice. But a 10 decibel noise increase, say that's about what a dishwasher does, but it could be up to like a vacuum, lowers productivity by 5%. Noise is also greater in poor neighborhoods. One more thing, noise really hurts detailed work. With a little bit of noise, software engineers find fewer bugs, productivity dips, and many tasks are disrupted.
So I got a question related to this.
Yeah.
How close, like how cheap would an apartment have to be if it were for you to live in it if he was right next to, I'm saying, like, let's say you're a college student, so you don't have like
Yeah.
infinite amount of money, for you to live right next to like an interstate or a train track or something that's like high decibels, like would it have to be like half the price, or a third of the price? It's kind of like a conjoint analysis, sort of.
I don't know what the threshold is, but I do know my own behavior. And
Yeah.
when I lived in Ruston, I lived near the doghouse, so near the
By
railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And it took about 18 months to get used to the train going by
Really?
at 2, 3 in the morning.
See, I lived near there, and I got to this point where I couldn't hear the train anymore, and it was fast. Like maybe a few
Really?
weeks. Yeah, like I legitimately, it could just be going by, and I would like my brain had just tuned it out. I didn't hear it anymore, and you'd have people over, and they're like, "God, that train's loud." I'm like, "What train?" Yeah,
Maybe it's like the smoke detector, where some people just
it
don't hear
is.
it. Some people just
Yeah.
don't hear it, or you just get used to it. This sort of thing. I will say I did not have a brick house there. It was a wood house, so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of sound comes through, etc. But boy, that's fascinating that you just like habituate to the train.
Yeah, you kind of get that way with small children too, with crying.
When I was a kid, we had a pendulum clock, and I'd have friends over, and they'd be like, "This noise is driving me crazy." Just like the tick-tock. Never heard it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just once you tune it out, it's hard to tune it back in. Like it's easy to tune it in if you've never tuned it out, but like once you tune it out, it's like it's gone forever.
What are the kids' biggest complaints right now? Like, what are they getting on you about that you need to do?
I mean, they don't really complain. They're great.
Or okay, what do they fuss about that you can tune out?
Yeah, they just go through the little stages of growth and everything. And when they get really ornery and stuff, and like, I don't want, they don't like they're not good at communicating when they're small,
Yeah.
right? So they communicate through crying, but sometimes it's like, well, we're going to school anyway. Even if you don't want to be there. Sorry, this is happening.
Boy, I tell you, this like work from home's really extended down to the lower levels of the family now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of weird to. Well, anyway, let's change subject.
Okay. This article was passed to me by. I won't go down that road. It's from the Journal of Applied Economics, 2009, and the peer effects in the workplace. Evidence from random groupings in professional golf tournaments. So the background is the paper examines peer effects in the workplace by looking at professional golf tournaments. Golfers are randomly assigned into these foursomes, this sort of thing, and they're essentially looking, do they rub off on each other? Can I improve my score by being paired with someone better? You won't believe this, but no, being paired with a better golfer does not improve your score. And this was presented to me as proof that there's no contagion between peers. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's. I kind of get why you went the direction of why you didn't want to talk about who sent it to you and why. But I feel like those two things could be mutually exclusive from one another. Like, is golf a high fidelity comparison to working in an office? Probably not.
No.
Is how you gauge performance in golf similar to how performance is engaged? And no, like golf is really easy. You know what the score is at all times. What's the score in the office? I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is like golf is, I mean, it's famously known as being one of the few non-team sports, right? So it's an independent sport, whereas most work in an office is team and collaboration based, right? There's interdependencies. It's a complex system. Golf is not a complex system. It is a simple system. So yeah, I think it's pretty, and that was just off the top of my head. It's pretty easy to pick apart why this was dumb.
I think that was a really good, succinct analysis of all the limitations of this sort of article here.
Can I go to the other direction though?
Yeah, please do.
Because I like golf. I'd never heard of this study, but I was always curious about this because when I watch golf, sometimes, a lot of times you'll be watching, and I was always curious, like, is this random or is this like a real thing? A
What,
lot
the
of times
pairings?
you'll see pairings, and all guys in the pairing are crushing it that day, or all guys in the pairing are having a really bad day together. And I always wonder, does that feed off each other? And it sounds like it doesn't necessarily. Is that a fair conclusion from what they said in the article?
Yes. So you do not see a increase in your score based on previous, I guess, like handicap, this sort of stuff
Interesting.
from a different
Huh.
golfer. I mean, there's all sorts of like confounds there too. Like 4 players put together, all teeing off relatively at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's gusty winds at that time, or bright sun. I don't know. All these sort of things that could also influence people scoring
Yeah, but like in the
similarly.
tournaments I'm watching, they all go off at relatively the same time, same conditions, same course. So a lot of those things are somewhat controlled for in terms of the variance.
Like a shotgun start.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is like it's very rare that and so I was talking about when you watch people playing on TV, but in even in like a personal grouping, like when I'm on the course, it's very rare that you just see, like, if you have a guys that are all roughly equivalent in golf, like one guy's just crushing it that day, but everybody else is sucking, or the vice versa of that. Like usually everybody's playing well or everybody's playing poorly. And so I didn't know if there was some kind of statistical artifact there.
Apparently no, according to this article. Pardon me. It also reminds me of the hot hand research where people
Yeah,
think they're like, oh, they're hot, and
but it's not,
no, but you're not, as the song goes.
as it goes.
As it goes, man.
But do you mind if I talk about an article, kind of nerdery-esque?
I think you should. I think I've
Right.
talked way too much today.
Well, so we've got some of our previous guests, and I guess this came out in that special episode of P-Psych that we've referenced a few times now. But Emily and Michael Campion wrote an article about machine learning applications to personnel selection, current illustrations, lessons learned, and future research. And it's really good. Like I read the article, and there's so much in here. It's kind of hard to summarize because they go through 5 different areas, but they brought up 1 or 2 things that I wanted to get your perspective on because you're a little closer to this than me. One is they said that one of their critics, they were broadly, I would say, very pro what some of the stuff that's being done to research machine learning in the selection context. But one of the things they said that a lot of folks leave out is the concept of reliability. So, when we get trained as biopsychologists, you learn a lot about reliability and validity.
Yes.
And they're saying a lot of times machine learning completely leaves out the concept of reliability over time. And that was one of the criticisms. And then the other was, sorry, I'm just trying to find it really quick.
No worries.
It was,
I'll riff on that just for a second while you're trying
to find it. Okay,
yeah,
you riff on it while I'm trying to find this.
Well, I guess there's more questions than real answers here. I assume that they're saying that like they would retrain the model, every couple months or whatever, and then ostensibly you would have a new training set that would produce new results. You would, in theory, predict new people to be we'll call it moved on to the hiring process as opposed to like strictly hired, which is really dangerous, really, really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I'm not as close to, I used to be pretty close to this earlier in my career. I'd call myself sort of a quasi data scientist. And one of the things that you would find, or I would find running models, is a lot of times you'd create a really, highly predictive model, and then you'd run it on new data sets, and the prediction quality would vastly diminished, even if you'd done, multiple cross validations, all the good stuff, right?
Overfitting
yeah,
your model.
Overfitting. And so I'm thinking they're talking about sort of like the problems with overfitting, but maybe when you're training a model, needing 4 or 5 data sets before you can make a claim of, hey, this is a really effective model, because it is lacking kind of that that reliability that you would need in a typical psychological study.
you need a lot of data for these sort of things too. Like this isn't something that a company of, I don't know, I don't know what the actual terms would be, but like 1,000 people with a variety of
Yeah.
different jobs. Say you're hiring for 10 people total. Like
Yeah.
this is not something that you want to do by any means. And like not to like kind of steal your thunder, but I saw a recent post by Santiago, who we've talked about some of his stuff on about.
Yeah.
He's posted before. And he essentially said that like a lot of people's first urge is to create an ML model, which, hey, great. You know, it's the hot thing. You use accurate results, this sort of thing. What you should really do is start with like some heuristics. And then that gives you a baseline to compare it against a ML model later. But it's also a lot simpler. Like we want from a IO perspective, we want someone with these qualities, like very simple. And then like you can make a more complex heuristic, like adding different elements. And then once you have enough sort of these sort of things where it becomes unwieldy, then you can move on to something more sophisticated like an ML model.
Well, you didn't realize, but that's actually the segue into the second point I wanted to talk to you about, which is one of their recommendations, and it was the second highest recommendation, was use the simplest necessary ML models that you can.
Yes.
And there's at least to me, from kind of the outside, there seems to be ongoing debate about this. Whereas like, I feel like the IO types, the scientist types are always looking for explainability. And then like the data science or computer science types are always looking for what they call alpha, where you're just like, we don't care about explainability. We'll make a deep learning model and no, I'll predict everybody. We don't care if we understand how it works. And so I'm curious what your perspective is on. I mean, it sounds like we already got your perspective, but can you kind of paint both sides of it?
Can I paint both sides? Like, okay, so we'll call it data scientist perspective is a theoretical where like, and they have a valid point. Like at the end of the day, you look at the model and you say like, look at R squared. We're explaining a lot of the variance. Our predictive ability is fantastic. And you look at this other model, we'll call it the IO model. It's like not as good as far as like the predictive power, this sort of stuff. But they can't explain why it's working. Why are these people better for this job, etc. At least IOs can say like, well, we wanted these characteristics in these people because
the heuristics you mentioned earlier.
The heuristics, and we can tell you why we input these sort of things into the model and why if the job changes, we could shuffle them in and out and it will still work, as opposed to being just like purely results driven.
No, I love that. And I think, and I believe the Campions would agree with what I'm about to say is why they made the suggestion is selection is a high stakes environment where interpretability for just legal defensibility, if nothing else, and I would call it just, procedural and distributive fairness and justice or whatever they call it. Like you got to know like why you were selected or not selected. It can't just be like, well, because the magical algorithm said so. Like that's not going to fly.
And this is also why they probably suggested choosing the most the simplest model you can, because you can make some like awesome predictions using neural network, this sort of stuff, but you can't explain why it happened, how it happened. And again, you're going to need a lot of data, and that's probably going to necessitate across different functions, across different time zones, against geographic differences, all these sort of things that, you can put into the model, but you don't know how it's really working at the end of the day. Correct. The job could be very, very different in different areas of the organization.
Absolutely. Do you have any nerdery stuff you want to talk about?
Oh, I kind of covered it all. Okay. Oh, here I got one more. This isn't nerdery, but you won't believe this, man. But a emotional support alligator was denied entry into a baseball stadium. The Philadelphia Phillies wouldn't let a guy come into the stadium with his emotional support alligator.
This is wrong on so many levels. Like, have you ever been around an alligator? They're not providing a lot of emotional support. They're reptiles.
I don't know. I think that's speciesist on your part, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm okay being a speciesist or whatever.
I think that we've passed like the days of like the wackiness like on airplanes, like people bring in like a snake or like an ostrich or this sort of stuff, but you never know.
Were they doing that at one
Yeah,
point?
yes.
Well, that shows how up to date I am.
I saw this lady flying the other day with like a dog and like a little. It was like a piece of luggage, like specifically crafted to be like a cage for a dog. And like I just happened to look over. I was in like a lounge somewhere, and like it's like, oh my god, there's a live animal in this.
I was at this outdoor restaurant the other day, and it was so the whole perk of this area, because they had like probably 10 restaurants, but they were kind of in shacks or like little huts, and it like had a big dog park behind it. So it was like supposed to be like a really dog friendly area.
Yeah.
And this one restaurant had signs everywhere in it that said, "No dogs in here, no dogs." But then they had like other signs just outside. It's like, "Dogs are allowed here." Like, you picked the wrong place to have like a no dog zone.
I think you'd be murdered in Seattle, or at least pilloried if you had like you expressed any sort of like anti-dog sentiment. I've never seen crazy stuff like I've heard people bringing dogs into grocery stores and letting them ride in the cart and all this sort of stuff.
Okay, so I have a question about this. Actually,
Yeah.
This dog park etiquette, because I don't have a dog, and because this restaurant wouldn't allow people to bring their dogs in, they just like went to the dog park and left their dogs.
Well,
so is that okay?
No, it's not okay, because I used to have a dog, unfortunately, RIP, greatest dog on earth, but you would have these dogs that would like attack other dogs, and that was a constant fear.
Yeah.
And you'd even like run across some owners that were there, and they'd be like, "Oh, they're just playing. Look at them playing." It's like, get your dog out of here. It's like it's literally attacking other dogs.
But then imagine if they left their attacking dog.
It's like
and went into a restaurant.
I mean, like, I get it. You want to bring your dog, but it's not a backyard. You can just leave the dog in either.
Yeah. I was like, first of all, I don't think it's acceptable at all to leave the dog. But if it were acceptable, what's the amount of time? Is it 1 minute? Is it like 30 minutes? Is it an hour? Can you come back like after work? like what's the acceptable amount of time?
Just kind of tangential to your previous point, like I was in Austin recently, Austin, Texas, and I wish there was a restaurant that just said like no live music allowed here. Because like everywhere you go, it's like some freaking like folk singer like in the corner like jamming out on the guitar, and you don't want to hear it. It's like, I'm just trying to eat, man. Just come on. Can I go somewhere and not hear freaking bad live music?
Well, yeah, like there is such a thing as good live music, and it's like I don't need my restaurant to be your training wheels for your shitty music.
Well, like you're there with like your friends. Like, I came here to talk and eat with my friends. It's like some guy, going to town. And I will say, like, everyone in Austin is a great musician. It's not that. I mean, they're good. I just want to hear it everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. You want like a no music zone.
You're definitely not breaking your career at El Patio Mexican restaurant at 11 a.m.
I mean, Nashville is kind of like that too, where it's just everywhere you go, there's live music. I mean, it's good, like, but
it's good for a while. Yeah, actually living in Austin, where like you can't go anywhere, is a pain. If you're visiting, okay, it's intriguing.
Yeah. I have a whole riff on Austin, but I won't get into it right
now. I'm interested.
I'm sure we'll talk about it after we get done recording.
Let's get out of here.
All right, man. Well, this has been fun. You've been listening to Direction Correct, People Analytics podcast with Colin Scott. And Colin Scott. That's it.
Later.